I Fucked a Wolf Man. By Lisa Fay. Chapter 1. The bar was alive with the buzz of chatter, clinking glasses, and the occasional burst of raucous laughter. Then the door creaked open, and a hush fell over the room like a shroud. He stepped in, a wolf man, a creature of nightmare and raw, predatory elegance. His towering frame dominated the entrance, nearly brushing the top of the doorway. He stood upright on powerful hind legs, his chest bare, muscles rippling beneath thick, coarse fur. The fur itself was a masterpiece of nature, long and rugged, a stormy blend of gray streaked with threads of white and black that caught the dim bar light in a subtle, shifting shimmer. His face was lupine, elongated yet distinctly expressive, his leaf green eyes glinting with an eerie intelligence and a predatory glimmer that pinned you in place. These were not emerald, not the dazzling green of jewels, but the green of forest leaves after rain, alive, natural, and utterly disconcerting against the backdrop of his wild appearance. His snout was tipped with a black, glistening nose, and his jaws parted slightly to reveal sharp teeth, catching the light as he inhaled deeply, scenting the air. He wore no shirt, his broad chest exposed, covered in the same streaked fur as his face. His lower half was clad in tattered trousers, hanging low on his hips, almost an afterthought against the primal nature of his being. The fabric was faded, frayed at the hems, the remnants of a human life somehow clinging to this beast. As he entered, the bar erupted into chaos. Chairs scraped, glass shattered, and voices rose in panic as patrons scrambled to flee. Yet amidst the storm of fear, I remained rooted in place, frozen like prey caught in the gaze of a predator. He turned his head sharply, his eyes locking onto mine. Time slowed as he began his purposeful stride towards me, each step heavy, claws clicking faintly on the wooden floor. Before I could will my body to move, his massive hand shot out, claws grazing my skin as he seized me by the back of my neck. The grip was firm, inescapable, and his growl, a deep, guttural sound that rumbled through my chest, left no room for resistance. My feet barely skimmed the ground as he dragged me out of the bar, the cool night air slapping against my face. Outside, beneath the full moon's ghostly glow, he tossed me to the ground like I weighed nothing. I landed hard, the breath knocked out of me. The moonlight illuminated him fully now, the silvery beams dancing across his streaked fur, casting his shadow long and monstrous against the dirt. I barely had time to catch my breath before he crouched, his green eyes blazing as his claws reached out. With one swift, deliberate motion, he slashed at my jeans, the fabric shredding beneath his razor-sharp talons. The cool night air rushed against my exposed skin as the remnants of the garment fluttered away, and I stared up at him, heart pounding, fear and adrenaline coursing through my veins. He steadied me with a firm grip at the back of my hair, his presence overwhelming as he loomed above me. His breath was heavy, his movements raw with an edge of wildness that made it impossible to tell where the man ended and the beast began. As he inserted himself and though both fear and pain gripped me, I couldn't deny the sheer power radiating from him. When it was over, he exhaled deeply, as if releasing something primal within himself. Without a word, he reached down, his hands strong and unyielding as he lifted me effortlessly over his shoulder. His grip was rough, ensuring I wouldn't slip. He strode deeper into the forest, the moonlight filtering through the canopy and illuminating the streaks of gray in his tousled fur. The trees closed in around us, their shadows stretching long and dark, and I could feel the thrum of his pulse beneath me. Each step he took felt deliberate, the ground crunching beneath his bare feet as if the forest itself bowed to his presence. I clung to the fragments of my breath, unsure of what lay ahead but certain that there was no escaping the force of him. Chapter 2. The first thing I noticed when I woke was the smell, a mix of pine, earth, and something faintly metallic. My body ached, and my head spun as I tried to make sense of where I was. A faint crackling fire whispered in the silence, its warmth brushing against my skin. I didn't dare open my eyes at first, the events of the night before rushing back in fragments of fear and disjointed memories. When I finally mustered the courage, my eyes fluttered open, and I saw the dim interior of a small, rustic cabin. The walls were wooden, rough-hewn, and lined with the clutter of a life lived in isolation. There was a table pushed against the far wall, A few shelves stacked with jars, and a thick bearskin rug sprawled across the floor. My pulse quickened as I remembered the wolf, the creature that had carried me here. Then I saw him, lying on the floor near the hearth. At first glance, he was just a man, his broad shoulders rising and falling with each breath. His long hair, thick and unkempt, was the same stormy gray as the fur I'd seen in his other form, streaked with subtle strands of white and black. It framed his face in loose waves, falling across a strong jawline. A faint beard, matching the streaks of his hair, shadowed his face, giving him an untamed, primal allure. He was bare-chested, his skin pale, marked with faint scars that crisscrossed his torso, remnants of battles I couldn't begin to imagine. His legs were covered in those same tattered trousers, now too familiar to me, the fabric torn at the edges and clinging to his lean, powerful form. Even in his human state, there was something wild about him, an energy that hummed just beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed. I thought he was asleep until his eyes opened, piercing green locking onto mine. They were the same as before, the green of leaves glistening after rain, alive with depth and intensity. Recognition struck me like a blow, and I froze, my breath caught in my throat. It was him. Wolf and man were one, the same untamed power now contained in a deceptively human shape. He didn't move, didn't say a word, just held my gaze, as though waiting for something. And in that silence, I realized I was no longer in the grip of the monster from the night before, but something equally as dangerous, equally as captivating. A moment longer, and he moves toward me, climbing onto the mattress with a deliberate, predatory grace. The low, guttural growl that escapes his throat sends shivers racing down my spine. His eyes are locked on me, dark and consuming, filled with an intensity that makes my pulse race in sheer terror. Instinctively, I throw my hands in front of me, a feeble attempt to shield myself from him. My trembling fingers are no match for his raw power. He grabs my wrists effortlessly, his grip like iron, and pins my hands down at my sides. His weight presses down on me as he looms above, his strength constant, suffocating reminder of my helplessness. I try to wriggle free, twisting and pushing against him with every ounce of strength I have, but it's no use. He's too strong, his body too heavy. The more I fight, the more immovable he feels, like a mountain I could never hope to climb. Then, a sickening realization hits me, a cold, sharp knife of awareness slicing through my panicked thoughts. Apart from the thin top clinging to my torso, I have no clothes on. Just the thin, fragile fabric of the sheet draped over me separates my skin from his. The vulnerability of it sends a wave of nausea rolling through me, and I gasp, trying to shout, to scream. But the sound dies in my throat, caught in a suffocating tangle of fear and despair. His hands move with practiced, ruthless efficiency. He grabs the hem of my top and yanks it over my head in one swift motion, discarding it as if it's nothing. My arms instinctively try to cover myself, but he doesn't give me the chance. Next, he pulls the sheet away, the cool air hitting my bare skin like a slap, leaving me exposed and trembling beneath him. Hot tears stream down my face, blurring my vision as I sob, my chest rising and falling in shallow, panicked breaths. He doesn't pause or waver, his focus is unrelenting. He takes the sheet he's just torn from me and rips it cleanly into two long strips, the sound of fabric tearing loud and final in the otherwise silent room. With the torn sheet, he binds my wrists to the bed frame, the knots tight and unyielding. I struggle against them, pulling and twisting, but they hold firm, biting into my skin with every movement. My heart pounds so loudly I can hear it in my ears, a frantic rhythm that matches my ragged breathing. He stands above me now, towering and unshakable, his eyes roaming over my body with a cold, calculating gaze. Slowly, deliberately, he removes his trousers, his every movement methodical, as if he knows there's no need to hurry. I look up at him through a haze of tears, sobbing and pleading, my voice trembling as I force the words out. Please. Don't. My voice cracks, barely audible, a broken whisper in the oppressive weight of the room. For a moment, his expression shifts, but it's impossible to read. Something flickers in his eyes, a fleeting shadow of thought or feeling. Then he lowers himself to one knee beside me, his broad frame dominating my vision. The bed creaks under his weight as he leans closer, his breath warm against my skin. I can see his cock hardening and pulsing next to my head. I try once again to say something, but it comes out almost as soft as a whisper. He grabs me by my hair and guides my face closer to his cock. "Be a good girl and open up," he says in a rough voice. Seeing I don't comply, he uses his other hand to find my nipple and pinch as hard as he could to make me gasp in pain. The moment my lips part, he shoves it into the back of my neck. He continues to thrust himself more into my mouth, making me almost gag and my eyes almost roll back from his length and brute force he's using. He takes it out, as if allowing me to catch my breath, only to shove it back inside more violently. I gag and almost choke as a result. He grins at this, and with his free hand he dries a tear rolling down my cheek. My eyes keep weeping as I suck at his length. Once again he takes it out, but this time he doesn't shove it back in, but he puts a piece of cloth down my throat as I try to speak. He releases my hair and uses both his hands to grab my breasts and pinch at my nipples. His touch isn't gentle and I try to scream, but each shout, each cry is muffled by the cloth inside my mouth. He grabs my nipples again, this time with his teeth, and he bites down, drawing blood. I wince in pain and arch my body upwards. But with a press of his palm on my abdomen I am back down. I try to kick with my legs, but he ties them as well. I am pinned and bounded and muffled. All I can do is watch in horror as he gets back on me, positioning himself at my entrance. He lowers his body on top of mine and pushes himself forward. I cry out in pain. He doesn't stop. He thrusts himself even deeper, ripping me apart. He is big and too thick for my pussy, and it hurts. I can't take it anymore. My body feels like it's betraying me, my head spinning and my limbs trembling. The overwhelming sensations pull me under, and the world blurs into darkness as I black out. Chapter 3. When I come to, I'm lying in the same room, the stale air heavy and still. My wrists are free, the rough fabric that had bound them now gone. I notice the absence of the cloth in my mouth, the relief muted by the soreness left behind. My cheeks feel tight, the dried streaks of tears leaving a faint, salty residue against my skin. Every breath is shaky, my chest heaving as I try to reorient myself. The room is dim and quiet, the faint scent of old wood and dust clinging to the air. As I glance around, my gaze catches movement at the doorway. He's there, his broad frame filling the space effortlessly, his eyes locking onto me like a predator surveying its prey. Instinctively, I try to cover myself, my arms wrapping around my bare chest as my legs curl inward. My efforts feel pitiful under his piercing gaze, his lips curling slightly into something that's not quite a smirk. "Are you going to behave, or do I need to tie you up again?" he asks, his tone calm but laced with warning. I don't respond, my throat too dry, my voice lost somewhere between fear and defiance. He watches me for a beat longer, then continues, his words deliberate. "I'm Karen," he says, his voice rough yet almost casual. "And you are?" He waits, his head tilting slightly as though he's giving me the space to answer. But nothing comes. My lips part, but no sound escapes. My name feels foreign, like something that doesn't belong to me anymore. He lets out a low exhale, shaking his head slightly. "We'll try this again later," he says, his tone hardening. Then he pauses, his eyes narrowing as he adds, "But just so you know, tonight is a full moon again. And when it rises, the wolf will come out to play. You'd better be ready to take it in." The weight of his words hangs in the air, chilling me to the bone. Before I can process them, he turns and strides out of the room, the heavy door creaking shut behind him. I'm left alone again, the silence deafening. My gaze drifts to the window, where the faint glow of the setting sun casts long, ominous shadows across the floor. The moonrise is near, I can feel it in the pit of my stomach, a gnawing dread growing with each passing second. The door opens again, startling me. Kieran doesn't speak as he steps inside, his expression unreadable. He sets a tray on the floor, its metal edges glinting faintly in the fading light, and leaves without a word, closing the door firmly behind him. I wait, my body tense, listening for his footsteps to fade. When I'm sure he's gone, I approach the tray cautiously, my bare feet making soft sounds against the worn wooden floor. I crouch down, lifting it carefully and bringing it to the creaky bed. The tray's contents are sparse: a bottle of water, a slightly squashed sandwich, and a long, finger-sized piece of something pale and solid. It takes me a moment to realize it's butter, its surface smooth and cool to the touch. I stare at it, puzzled. The sandwich is already made, and there's no extra bread. Butter on its own seems strange, almost absurd in this setting. Then I notice a small piece of crumpled paper tucked beneath the tray. My hands tremble as I reach for it, the worn texture of the note brushing against my fingertips. Carefully, I unfold it, smoothing out the creases to reveal a hastily scribbled message inside. "You should put it in your ass before he makes his appearance." Wait, what? As I nibble on the sandwich, my gaze keeps flickering between the crumpled note and the odd piece of butter resting on the tray. The note's hastily scrawled words echo in my mind, refusing to let me focus on anything else. The thought of what's coming sends my stomach churning, though hunger compels me to keep eating. My fingers tremble slightly as I grip the sandwich, tearing off bite-sized pieces and chewing slowly, all the while stealing nervous glances at the strange object beside me. The butter sits there, innocuous and unassuming, yet it fills me with unease. The instructions were vague at best, unsettling at worst. I've never done anything like this before, anything. The idea of it feels intrusive, unnatural, and absurd. I try to push the thought away, but it lingers, accompanied by the gnawing fear of what might happen if I ignore it. Then there's the wolf. The memory of his eyes, his strength, and his unrelenting presence sends a shiver down my spine. By the time I finish the sandwich, the room has grown darker. Shadows stretch across the walls, deepening the oppressive atmosphere. Night has fallen, and with it comes an unsettling quiet. The stillness feels wrong, as though the world is holding its breath, waiting. Exhausted and unable to keep pacing, I decide to lie on the bed. The mattress creaks beneath me as I settle into its lumpy surface, wrapping myself in the thin blanket in an attempt to feel safe. But the silence doesn't last long. A distant howl breaks through the quiet, low and haunting, sending a jolt of terror through me. He's nearby. I grab the butter and I try my best to put it gently in and press with my finger. I wince a little, but it finally slipped it. I don't mind the sensation of it, it's actually nice. I feel the butter as it melts inside. But it's short-lived as the door bursts open with a sudden crash, the sound reverberating through the room. A chill sweeps through the air as the figure steps inside, his silhouette towering in the doorway. The all-too-familiar wolf stands there, on his hind legs, his massive form outlined against the dim light from the hallway. His eyes gleam like two molten embers in the darkness, flicking toward me with predatory intensity. I instinctively scramble further away from the edge of the bed, my heart racing, but there's nowhere to escape. The bed frame presses into my back as I hit it, my body frozen in place. The wolf moves toward me with a low growl, each step deliberate and heavy, the weight of his presence filling the room. He growls and grabs me by the leg, pulling me downwards. I flip on my stomach and try to crawl back up, away from the wolf, but he grabs my other leg and pulls. I'm now half on the bed, with my legs dangling on the floor and he's propped behind me. I can feel his claws on my ass as he parts it and leans in, taking a whiff. He howls and I am frozen in place, too afraid to move and even to breath. He pulls my ass toward him and parts my cheeks. I shout when he inserts himself in. His cock is much bigger in his wolf form and I never had anything shoved in my rectum until now. He pushes himself more, parting me as he goes deeper. I scream in pain. I can feel his cock poking at my insides, I can feel it pulsing and growing bigger inside. I try to grab my stomach in an attempt to ease the pain, the burning sensation inside my ass, but nothing. And then it happens. I feel him pulsing stronger than before and I feel a hot liquid coursing inside. He's filling my ass with his cum. I can feel my belly growing bigger. He's still filling me up. I am no longer sure what it is, either his cum or his piss or both. As he takes his cock out of me, my ass pours the warm liquid all over the floor. My hole is still dripping, but he grabs me and throws me on the floor. I stagger myself half up, he grabs my hair and pulls me towards him. I let out a small cry, and with my lips already parted he shoves his length down my throat. I can taste myself on it, but I also feel the metallic taste of blood mixed in. He shoves it deeper and deeper. With his cock so much down my throat I can't breathe and everything goes black. Chapter 4. I wake with a start, the soft rustling of the blanket the only sound in the stillness of the room. The warmth of the fabric is a brief comfort, but my eyes dart around, and I find myself alone. The door creaks open slowly, and Kieran steps inside, his figure filling the doorway. His gaze locks onto me, calm yet intense, and his voice is soft but firm. "Are you ready to tell me your name?" I freeze, my heart pounding in my chest. Without a word, I pull the blanket tighter around myself, retreating to the furthest corner of the bed. His presence fills the space, his posture relaxed yet commanding, as he takes a step closer. "I won't bite," he adds, his voice a quiet reassurance, or perhaps a challenge. "If you tell me your name, I'll bring you some clothes." I remain silent, my eyes fixed on him, studying his every movement, not trusting myself to speak. The room feels heavier now, charged with the unspoken tension between us. He pauses, watching me for a long moment, then pats the bed gently. "Come here. Sit." His words are calm but insistent. "You don't have to stay like that. Drop the blanket, and come sit on the bed. Be a good girl, and this can go easier for both of us." I hesitate, feeling the weight of his stare, the control he exudes, but something in me tells me not to resist. Slowly, I shift closer, releasing the blanket. The air between us crackles as I climb onto the bed, my movements slow, deliberate. His gaze doesn't waver, watching me as I settle, the room heavy with anticipation. "Good girl. Now sit on all four." I do as I'm told. "You can put your head down." I bow my head down onto the mattress. I can hear him undress. "Now part your ass for me." I slightly turn my head in his direction. "Please don't, not my ass," I cry out. "Did you not hear me?" I raise my trembling hands and grab my ass and pull firmly. "Don't worry, I'll toy with it first," he says as he starts pressing his fingers against the rim. He puts his fingers in my pussy and glides them around, getting them all coated. He traces the path to my hole and presses two in. "Please stop." He moves his fingers in and out while putting his other hand between my legs. I feel his thumb on my clit, rubbing it. I can't help it and I let out a moan. "Good girl," enjoying herself. He takes out his fingers from my ass but continues to rub and circle against the rim while increasing his thumb rubbing pace. I feel pressure and he pushes 3 fingers in. I wriggle and try to pull away, but he grabs me by my thigh. He retreats from my ass, and he uses both hands in between my legs, alternating rubbing and finger penetration. I moan louder as the intensity grows. He lets out a laugh but doesn't stop rubbing my clit. He takes some slick and smears it against my hole and I feel his cock near my rim. He coats it in and asks, "Are you going to take it all in?" I nod and he slides his length inside. I cringe. "It hurts, please take it out, part yourself more, now be good." I do as told and I feel him pressing inside more. It hurts, but not like last night. I don't feel it burning anymore. He's thrusting more powerful than before and although it still hurts I moan. Upon hearing my moan he starts rubbing my pussy and my clit faster. Good girl deserves a reward. Now I feel my body heating up and I can't take it anymore. I arch my back into his thick cock and I come as he's still pounding my ass. He fills me up and I collapse on my stomach. He rubs my back, almost tenderly I'd say, and turns me to face him. "I'm Kieran," he says. "Garina," I reply. "Well, Garina, be a good girl and tell me, would you want me to fuck your pussy now and after shove it down your throat or straight to the mouth and blacking out?" "Put it in my pussy," I whisper. "Say it properly, put it in my pussy please. Please Kieran, put your thick cock in my pussy and make me come out, a girl. I love how my name rolls on your tongue. It makes me even harder." He pauses as he glides his length inside. "Take it all in, Garina." Chapter 5. Can I ask you something? I glance over at Kieran, my voice barely above a whisper. The room is quiet and his gaze meets mine with an unreadable expression. After a pause, he nods slightly, allowing me to continue. Are you in control of the wolf? Kieran doesn't answer immediately, his eyes narrowing for just a moment before he speaks, his voice low and steady. If I weren't, you wouldn't be here to ask this question. I swallow, processing his words, but a new thought comes to me. Can you talk when in wolf form? He shakes his head slowly. That I cannot. But you can listen, right? I ask, my fingers lightly clutching the edge of the blanket as I sit on the edge of the bed, nervous energy buzzing through me. There's a brief pause before Kieran's lips curl into a small, almost knowing smile. What do you have in mind? I lean forward slightly, my voice just a hint of a challenge, my eyes locking with his. Guess you'll see. Without another word, Kieran rises from the bed, the movement graceful but deliberate, and heads toward the door. As he passes, he places a gentle kiss on the top of my head, his lips soft against my hair. The warmth lingers as he leaves, the door closing behind him with a soft click. The quietness of the room becomes more suffocating as the minutes stretch on. I sit there, wrapped in the blanket, lost in my own thoughts. My heart beats faster with each passing moment, the heavy weight of what's to come settling in my chest. The day drags, time slipping by with agonizing slowness. I try to focus on the soft creaking of the floorboards above me, the occasional sound of distant wind pushing against the window, but the anticipation gnaws at me. I can't shake the feeling that something is coming, something I can't prepare for. By the time the sun dips below the horizon, the room has grown darker, the shadows lengthening on the walls as the evening deepens. I stand and move to the window, cautiously parting the curtains just enough to see outside. The forest looms beyond the cabin, the trees shifting in the wind, but there's an eerie silence that hangs over the land. And then, a distant howl slices through the quiet, sharp and mournful, sending a chill down my spine. The wolf. He's near. I draw in a shaky breath, stepping away from the window. My hands tremble slightly as I wrap the blanket tighter around me, my gaze flicking toward the door. I know what's coming, and yet, I can't seem to prepare for it. The air in the room feels heavier now, thick with the tension of what's to come. I wait, feeling the weight of time stretch, the stillness almost unbearable, until the next howl breaks through the silence, louder this time, closer. I take one last steadying breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I know I have no choice but to face whatever comes next. I get up in bed, propped against a few pillows with my legs spread wide. He enters the room and sees me like this. There's a look in his eyes, not only hunger or arousal but something more. As he approaches the bed I look him straight in the eyes. Let's see if you can listen. Lick it. I almost shout my command as I look from it between my legs. And he listens. He starts licking my pussy wildly with his huge strong tongue. It feels so good that I start to moan almost immediately. But Kieran stops abruptly, his body going rigid as a low growl rumbles through the air, emanating from somewhere near the house. His ears twitch, his green eyes narrowing, and his nostrils flare as though scenting the intruder before I even see them. Then, stepping into view, another wolfman strides in, larger and broader than Kieran. His presence fills the space with an oppressive weight, the air itself seeming to thicken. His fur is midnight black, absorbing the dim light like a shadow given form. His leaf green eyes gleam with the same wild intelligence, though his gaze carries a sharper edge, more commanding, more dangerous. The growls between the two deepen, their lips curling back to reveal sharp fangs as they size each other up. Every muscle in their bodies tenses, vibrating with restrained violence. The new wolf takes a deliberate step toward me, his heavy footfalls reverberating in the small space. Panic grips me, and I scramble to get behind Kieran, seeking some semblance of protection, but I'm not fast enough. The new wolf snarls and grabs me roughly, his claws grazing my skin as he throws me across the room like I weigh nothing. The impact is sharp, pain exploding in my head as I hit the floor, and everything blurs into darkness. Chapter 6. I woke to the sound of shouting, two male voices, deep and forceful, cutting through the haze of my pounding headache. My temple throbbed, a dull ache radiating from where I must have hit my head the night before. The argument was heated, words sharp and biting, and I strained to make sense of them through the fog clouding my mind. How long were you going to keep her hidden, little brother? The voice was louder now, followed by the heavy bang of a fist striking a table. For as long as I could, Kieran replied, his voice low and simmering with defiance. She will learn to take us both, the other voice growled, an edge of finality in the statement. The words hit me like a physical blow, and I gasped involuntarily. The sound betrayed my consciousness, drawing their attention. The cabin grew eerily silent, and I felt their eyes turn toward me before I even opened mine. When I dared to look, they were standing in the doorway. The larger man entered first, his imposing frame blotting out the light behind him. Kieran followed, lingering near the threshold, his expression unreadable but his eyes fixed on me. Looking at the new man was unsettlingly like looking at Kieran. Their features were cut from the same mold, angular jawlines, piercing green eyes, and that air of primal dominance. But this man was broader, his shoulders impossibly wide, his chest heaving as though he were barely holding back the beast within. His hair was pure black, matching the fur of his wolf form, and it fell in unkempt waves to his shoulders. "Come here," he commanded, his voice gravelly and firm. I glanced at Kieran, desperate for some guidance, some reassurance. He gave the faintest nod, his eyes offering no solace but a silent demand to comply. Trembling, I wrapped the blanket tighter around myself and rose unsteadily, stepping toward the larger man. "I'm Keith," he said, his tone carrying authority. "His older brother." "Garina," I murmured, my voice shaking as I stood before him, acutely aware of how small I felt in his presence. "Strip. I want to see you." My breath caught in my throat, and I glanced at Kieran again, hoping for reprieve, for something. But before I could meet his gaze, Keith stepped closer, blocking my line of sight. "You don't look at him," he growled, his voice a dangerous warning. "You do as I say. Now strip." Heart hammering, I obeyed, my hands trembling as I let the blanket fall to the floor. The cold air pricked at my skin, and I stood there, exposed, my body tense under their scrutiny. Keith's gaze was piercing, his eyes raking over every inch of me with an unsettling mix of detachment and possession. Occasionally, he reached out, his calloused fingers brushing over my skin, his touch firm and uninvited. "You've got quite the bruises," he noted, his voice almost casual. "Did my brother rough you up? Or maybe it was when you threw me against the floor, if you've already forgotten," I snapped, the words escaping before I could stop them. The response was immediate and brutal. His hand struck across my face, the back of his palm sharp against my cheek. My head snapped to the side, and I tasted blood on my lips as a sharp sting radiated from where he'd hit me. Keith stepped closer, his presence suffocating, and brushed a thumb over the drop of blood on my lip, his touch mocking the violence he'd just inflicted. "Drop to your knees," he commanded, his voice low but unyielding, a demand that left no room for resistance. I kneel down and look upward to him as he pulls the zipper to his pants to reveal his already hard cock. "Fuck," I say, looking at it. It's twice the size of Kieran's. "Now suck it," he adds. I look at him and back at his cock and I draw closer. I start licking the tip and he lets out a guttural sound. I grab his length with both hands and slowly start to suck on it, trying to take it in as much as I can. He's so much bigger than his brother and thicker too. I can barely take half of him in my mouth. He doesn't grab my head nor he tries to pushes himself to choke me. He looks down just as I look up, and as our gaze lock, I can see his hand coming down on my head and I think this is it, he'll push all his length in my mouth, but he doesn't, he caresses my head instead. "Good girl," he says, "our good girl." I keep sucking at it as my hands strike it up and down, but he gestures to me to get up, his gaze never leaving mine. As I get up, he grabs me from the back of my neck and pulls me in and puts his tongue in my mouth. He kisses me and bites my lip, and when we pull apart, he says, "You were ours long before you even knew it. It was no coincidence you were at that bar and that my brother literally dragged you out and brought you here. They offered you to us." His lips crash onto mine again. This time I'm the one to bite him. "Tell me more," I say. "I will tell you everything you want to know," he replies. Right after I fuck you senseless, he lowers his hand between my inner thighs and finds my head and starts caressing it. I let out a moan against his lips and it sends him over the edge. "Bed, now," on all four he demands. I climb onto the bed, back turned to them. Other way around. "You'll look at my brother while I fuck you from behind." I reposition myself and he climbs behind me. I can feel his cock pulsing between my legs as he rubs my clit with its head. I moan louder. "Look at Kieran while I'm putting it in you," and as I arch my back and look up, locking gaze with my first wolf, I can feel Keith sliding it in. It's so thick. "You're going to break me." He puts both his hands on my ass to steady me and to hold me in place and thrust fully. "Wait till you see my wolf," he laughs. I gasp and scream but don't break eye contact with Kieran. He looks at me with hungry eyes, cursing under his breath. As Keith keeps fucking me, I feel his hands lowering and his fingers tracing across the rim. "Please don't, not there, you won't fit in there. It hurts and I don't want to bleed again." He stops pounding me. "Did my brother bleed you here?" His thumb presses down. "His wolf did," I add. "Well, I'm not going to bleed you again." "Thank you," I reply, thinking he'll leave my ass alone. As he resumes his fucking, I feel him push something small in my ass and then a pressure and a cold liquid that fill me. I try to pull away but he grabs my waist. "You trust me, don't you?" I don't answer immediately and he slaps my ass hard. "Right?" He presses. "I do," I say, although I don't know what to believe. I feel it again. He's putting something small in my ass and it creates a pressure and liquid pours out of the thing and into my hole. I try to glance over my shoulder and I see a syringe with rounded tip. He's filling my ass with lubricant? Kieran comes closer to the edge of the bed and pulls his cock out in front of me. "You can take him in your mouth," Keith says whilst pulling out of my pussy. I open my mouth and Kieran puts it in, surprisingly slow. I feel more lube being poured between my ass cheeks as Keith spreads them apart. "Be a good girl and keep them like this," he tells me as he guides my hands. I can feel the tip of his head pressing down my rim. He's so thick. But he doesn't hurry, he toys with his fingers, pushing two in and out. Pressing again with his tip and then trying to slide two fingers from each hand in. All while his brother is fucking my mouth. Although he hasn't pushed more than half of it inside. He probably doesn't want me to black out before Keith is finished with me. I feel Keith's hands sliding against my back and grabbing my shoulders, and Kieran grabs my head with both hands, his cock still half in my mouth. I can feel the pressure from the tip of his head increasing so much it feels like burning. With a deliberate thrust his head slides in. I scream at the sensation but nothing comes out. "You're so tight," he adds. My eyes are tearing up and my screams are muffled by the cock hanging in my mouth. "Relax your ass, I'm going to push it all in." I try to hit at Kieran to get him to take out his cock so I can speak. "No, don't put it in, you can't," I want to say, but he keeps me still. Keith grabs me firmer by my shoulders and he forces himself inside, completely. I cry out and Kieran fills my mouth with his cum, slowly pulling out. "I'm not going to last much longer either," his brother tells him. "She's so tight, it's strangling me." He tries to move but I wince. "It will be over soon." He caresses my back. "Just a little longer, okay?" His voice is soft. "Okay." He thrusts a few times and I can feel him filling me up with his cum. As he takes it out, I collapse onto the bed, my body aching and heavy with exhaustion. Every movement sends jolts of pain through my ass, but the bed softness offers some relief. I barely notice when Keith slides in behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist as he pulls me close. His body radiates warmth, and though his presence unsettles me, the comfort of being held is undeniable. My eyelids grow heavy, and before I know it, sleep claims me. Chapter 7. I wake to the low murmur of voices drifting through the cabin. For a moment, I forget where I am, but the weight of the blanket tucked around me brings me back to reality. My muscles are stiff, and my mind feels clouded. I shift, noticing a neatly folded set of clothes laid beside the bed. The fabric is simple but clean, a tunic and trousers in muted earthy tones. As I stand and begin to dress, the door creaks open. Keith fills the doorway, his imposing figure silhouetted against the dim light of the hallway. His green eyes glint as he steps inside, his presence commanding but not aggressive. "How are you feeling?" he asks, his voice low but steady. "It still hurts, I admit," the words slipping out almost reluctantly. "And it will hurt for a few more times," he replies, stepping closer. His hand cups my chin, tilting my face up toward his as his lips crash onto mine. His kiss is rough and consuming, leaving me breathless when he finally pulls back. "Come," he says, gesturing toward the door. "I said I'd tell you everything you want to know." I hesitate, rooted to the spot as though my feet have been nailed to the floor. Keith notices my reluctance and raises an eyebrow, his tone hardening slightly. "You are not confined to this room, nor to the cabin," he says. "As long as you listen like a good girl." I nod slowly. The wooden floor creaks beneath my bare feet as I glance around. The walls are rough-hewn logs, the wood darkened with age and smoke. Faint light filters through a small window at the end of the hall, casting long shadows that seem to stretch endlessly. The kitchen is modest, with a sturdy wooden table and mismatched chairs. Herbs hang from the ceiling in dry bundles, their faint, earthy aroma mingling with the scent of smoke from the fireplace. A single oil lamp flickers on the table, illuminating a loaf of bread and a pot of something steaming gently. Keith pulls out a chair and gestures for me to sit. I glance at him warily but take the seat. He sits across from me, his elbows resting on the table, his posture relaxed yet commanding. "Are we alone today?" I ask, my voice quiet but steady. "Where is Karen?" Keith's lips curve into a faint smirk. "Would you want to be alone with me?" I don't answer, and his smirk deepens. "He's outside, gathering wood for the fire. It seemed only fair that I have some time to enjoy your company, considering my little brother had you all to himself before I tracked you here." I hesitate, my throat tightening with unease. "Why me?" "Your village made a bargain with us long ago," he replies, his tone matter-of-fact. "Your fate was sealed long before you were born. And I have no say in this, I presume." Keith leans forward slightly, his green eyes piercing. "We are not your enemies. Think of us as your companions, your protectors." I scoff, bitterness rising in my chest. "And I just have to follow you around and please your cocks whenever you see fit." My words are sharper than I intended, and I flinch, bracing for the slap I expect to follow. But it never comes. Instead, Keith's gaze narrows. "I'll let it slide this time," he says, his voice low and dangerous. "But yes, that sums it up. And next time, mind your language." His hand reaches out, brushing against my cheek before tracing the line of my jaw. "Why are you like this?" I ask, the question slipping out before I can stop myself. He tilts his head. "What do you mean?" "Gentle," I reply. "Would you like me to be rough?" "I didn't say that, I just asked why." "You are definitely more imposing than your brother, and so why act like you care, like you give a fuck about me?" Keith chuckles, a deep, rumbling sound. "But I do care. And as long as you listen the first time, I don't need to be rough. My presence alone demands respect." His words leave me speechless for a moment, and I stare down at my hands. Finally, I gather the courage to ask, "Can we be alone tonight?" "Not tonight," he says, his tone softening. "But tomorrow, if that's what you wish." "Why not tonight, if I may ask?" Keith leans back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. "You may. Tonight is the last night of the full moon this month. We'll both need you. And after tonight?" "After tonight, we'll no longer transform uncontrollably," he explains. "We can shift, if necessary, but it takes more energy. On full moons and the few following days, we have no choice. And no control over our urges." "Which is where I come in," I murmur. "Exactly," he says. "So that we don't prey on anyone passing through the forest or from the villages closest to us. You are important for us." I meet his gaze, searching for any sign of insincerity, but his expression is calm and serious. "Would you still like for us to be alone?" Keith asked, his voice low and calm, though his eyes carried a hint of something unreadable. "Karen still has to chop all the wood he brought back." I hesitated, the question lingering in the air. Will you be gentle? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Keith stepped closer, the weight of his presence making the small kitchen feel even smaller. He crouched slightly so his face was level with mine, his intense green eyes searching mine. If you ask me to nicely, he said, his tone soft but firm, as though daring me to let my guard down. I swallowed, my heart racing as I summoned the courage to reply. Please, Keith, I murmured, my voice trembling, be gentle. A faint smile ghosted his lips, not mocking but oddly tender. He reached out, his calloused hand brushing a strand of hair from my face. I promise, Karina, he said softly, his voice steady and deliberate. Chapter 8. Keith extended a hand towards me, his green eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that sent a shiver through me. His lips curled into a faint, almost teasing smile as he asked, "Shall we go to the bedroom?" For a moment, I hesitated, the weight of the question settling between us. Then, cautiously, I reached out and placed my hand in his. His grip was firm yet warm, a strange blend of reassurance and control. I nodded, unable to find my voice. He guided me back to the bedroom, each step measured and deliberate. The soft creak of the wooden floor beneath us seemed deafening in the silence, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest. As we reached the bed, he paused, turning to face me. His hand lingered on mine for a moment before he let go, climbing onto the mattress with the grace of a predator who had all the time in the world. I followed hesitantly, the blanket slipping on the floor as I knelt on the bed next to him. Keith leaned back against the headboard, his eyes scanning my face with an almost unnerving calm. "How do you want to take me, Karina?" he asked, his voice low and smooth, yet carrying an edge of challenge. His words hung in the air, charged with expectation. My breath caught in my throat as I tried to process them, unsure if he was testing me, teasing me, or simply waiting for me to decide how much control I was willing to take, or surrender. I hesitated before speaking, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can do whatever I want to you, and you won't get angry with me or hurt me?" Keith's gaze sharpened, his green eyes locking onto mine as if he were searching for something hidden within. After a moment, his expression softened, and a faint, almost amused smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Anything within reason," he replied, his voice steady and reassuring. "And I promised once, did I not?" His tone carried a quiet strength, as though his word was unshakable. I searched his face for any hint of hesitation, any crack in the confidence he exuded, but there was none. "I am not one to break my word," he added, his gaze never wavering. There was a weight to his words, a sincerity that made my chest tighten. It wasn't just the promise itself, it was the unwavering conviction behind it. For a moment, I felt a strange mix of vulnerability and trust, as if I were standing on the edge of something far deeper than I can yet understand. I tilted my head, a daring glint in my eyes as I asked, "What if I were to tie you to the headboard of the bed and go on you slowly?" Keith's brow lifted slightly, the hint of a smirk tugging at his lips. For a moment, his silence made my heart race, but then he leaned closer, his voice low and laced with intrigue. "You want to take the lead?" he mused, his tone carrying both surprise and amusement. "I won't say I'm against the idea. It sounds interesting." He paused, his emerald gaze locking onto mine, and I felt a shiver course through me. "But," he added, his voice dipping to a growl that sent heat flooding through me, "if you go too slow, I might just break the headboard and take you fully." His words were both a warning and a challenge, the raw edge of his restraint a reminder of the power he held beneath the surface. My breath caught as his smirk grew wider, a mixture of anticipation and mischief dancing in his eyes. "So," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from my face, "are you willing to take that risk, little one?" "I am," I whispered, my voice trembling but resolute. Slowly, I climbed over him, holding his gaze as I reached for the soft fabric strips left from before. His hands rested on the bed frame, unbound but still. "Go ahead, Karina," he encouraged, his voice steady yet tinged with curiosity. "Show me what you're capable of." I took the fabric and slid it around his wrist, the roughness of the cloth contrasting against his warm skin. "If you don't behave, I teased, knotting it tightly. I might have to double this. His lips curved into a smirk, but he didn't resist. Oh, I'll behave. For now, he murmured. His voice was velvet, smooth and deep, but there was a subtle edge to his words, a warning wrapped in promise. The first wrist tied, I moved to the other, his muscles flexing beneath my fingers as if testing me. "You're enjoying this," I observed, my breath hitching as I secured the second knot. "Of course I am," he admitted, tilting his head back slightly, exposing the sharp line of his jaw. "You're captivating when you're in control." He'd rushed to my cheeks, but I didn't let it falter my hands. "Don't think flattery will get you out of these ties," I shot back, settling back to survey my handiwork. His arms stretched above him, wrists bound tightly to the wooden frame. He tested the restraints with a low chuckle. "Sturdy work," he admitted, the admiration in his tone sparking a flutter of pride in my chest. "Now what, Karina?" I straddled his waist, the movement deliberate and slow, feeling the tension in the air as thick as the heat between us. His eyes darkened, tracking my every move. "Now," I said, leaning forward so my lips hovered just above his ear, "I take my time." "Teasing, are we?" His voice was a low rumble, his restrained hands curling into fists as I let my fingers trail down his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath me. "Isn't that what you wanted?" I countered, my fingertips brushing over the hard lines of his torso. His breath hitched, but he didn't look away, his unwavering gaze burning into mine. "Careful, Karina," he murmured, his tone dripping with warning and allure. "The wolf in me doesn't appreciate being taunted for too long." I leaned closer, my lips just a hair's breadth from his, feeling his breath mingle with mine. "You're not breaking free from this," I whispered, emboldened by the way his jaw tightened. "And if I do?" he challenged, a flicker of danger lighting his eyes. I tilted my head, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead, my fingers ghosting against his temple. "Then I suppose I'll just have to tame you again," I replied, my voice steady despite the wild rhythm of my heart. He exhaled a laugh, low and primal, but his expression softened. "You're something else, Karina." "Am I?" I whispered, letting my hand drift back down his chest, my nails grazing his skin lightly. His breath hitched again, and I smirked. "Then I guess you'll just have to endure this. Whatever I decide this is." He closed his eyes for a moment, his restraint palpable, a hum of tension vibrating between us. "You're playing with fire," he murmured, his voice low and strained. I leaned in, my lips brushing just below his ear. "Good," I whispered, a thrill running through me at the way his body tensed beneath mine. For a long moment, neither of us moved, the silence heavy with unspoken promises and the undeniable pull between us. His bound hands flexed against the ties, but he didn't fight them, yet. "Careful, little one," he murmured, his voice a growl now, sending a shiver down my spine. "You might just burn yourself." "Then I guess I'll have to see how close I can get," I murmured back, my fingers tracing the edge of his jaw. He didn't reply immediately, his gaze burning into mine, the silence between us heavy and charged. Then, with a slow, deliberate smile, he said, "Just remember, Karina, fire can burn." I leaned in closer, my lips brushing against his as I whispered, "And yet, here you are, letting me hold the match." The tension hung in the air, thick and palpable, as we stayed locked in this delicate balance of control and surrender. I traced lazy patterns across his chest, savoring the way his breath quickened beneath my touch. "You're cruel," he murmured, his voice rough, though there was a hint of amusement in his tone. "Am I?" I asked, tilting my head as I let my nails scrape lightly down his arms. "Yes," he replied, his eyes narrowing slightly. "And yet, I can't seem to stop you." "Maybe you don't want to," I said softly, leaning down until my lips were just barely brushing against his. His breath hitched, and for a moment, I thought he might break free of the restraints. But he didn't. Instead, he held perfectly still, his gaze locked onto mine, daring me to go further. The heat between us was almost unbearable, the tension pulling tighter and tighter with every passing second. And yet, neither of us moved to break it, both caught in this intoxicating dance of control and desire. Chapter 9. The tension in the room reached a fever pitch, the air almost too thick to breathe. I lingered above him, savoring the way his body responded to every slight touch, every calculated movement. His breath was unsteady now, his composure cracking ever so slightly, and it sent a thrill through me. "Gorina," he said, his voice a low warning. His hands flexed against the restraints, the wooden frame groaning faintly under the strain. "You're pushing your luck." "Am I?" I asked, my lips quirking into a small, defiant smile. He didn't answer, his dark gaze locked on mine. It was a challenge, unspoken but impossible to miss. I leaned in, brushing my lips against his in the barest ghost of a kiss. "Tell me to stop," I whispered against his mouth, my voice trembling just enough to betray the vulnerability beneath my bravado. "I won't," he murmured, his voice rough with restraint. "But if you keep this up, I might not let you stop, either." His words sent a shiver down my spine, and for a moment, I faltered. The raw intensity in his gaze, the sheer force of his presence, was almost too much. But then, I steadied myself, meeting his challenge head on. I slid my hands down his chest, tracing every ridge and curve of muscle with deliberate slowness. His breath hitched, and I felt the faintest tremor beneath my palms. "Gorina," he growled, his tone both a warning and a plea. "SHH," I murmured, pressing a finger to his lips. "I'm not done yet." His jaw tightened, his hand straining against the bindings again. The tension between us was unbearable now, a taut string ready to snap. I leaned down, pressing my lips to his in a kiss that was slow and searching, teasing and deliberate. He responded instantly, his restrained hands curling into fists as he fought against the urge to take control. For a moment, I was lost in the heat of it, the way he kissed me back with a hunger that stole my breath. But then I pulled away, and unzipped his pants, pulling his throbbing length out. I undressed from the waist down and I gently climbed his thickness, rubbing against it with slow deliberate moves. He moaned as I intensified the speed of my movements. I grabbed it with my hand, holding it at my entrance as I slowly descended on it. I winced. He is too thick for me and it's difficult for me to take him all in no matter how wet I get. "Please Gorina, put it in, you've been teasing me for far too long." He almost begged in a husky voice. I didn't reply, I just continued to slowly lower myself onto his cock, taking it in little at a time. He tried to thrush himself upwards but I lifted my hips and his cock popped out. "Ah, Gorina, you're being naughty." I grabbed it once again in my hand and propped it near my heat, gently lowering my hips once again. After I managed to take all his length in, I started tracing 8-like patterns from my hips. The movement seemed to entice him and he let out a loud growl. I leaned forward, crashing my lips onto his. His kiss was hungry, demanding, consummating, as though he was trying to claim every part of me in that single moment. His lips moved against mine with a fervent intensity, rough yet intoxicating, drawing me deeper into him. His breath was hot and uneven, mingling with mine, and every movement of his mouth sent a rush of heat through my body. He tilted his head slightly, deepening the kiss, his tongue brushing against my lips in a teasing demand for more. When I parted them, the sensation was electrifying, a fire ignited between us that burned away any hesitation or restraint. The kiss was a battle and a surrender all at once. He tasted of heat and danger, of something forbidden yet impossible to resist. Every second seemed to stretch into eternity, the world around us fading away until nothing existed but the press of his lips, the feel of his body so close to mine, and the unspoken promises in his touch. I could feel his heart beat through the connection, strong and insistent, matching the wild rhythm of my own. His kiss consumed me, leaving me breathless, lost, and entirely his in that moment. As my lips brushed against his as I whispered, "I think that's enough for now." His eyes snapped open, dark and stormy, and for a moment, I thought he might actually break free of the restraints. But then he let out a low, ragged laugh, shaking his head. "I can't believe you really did that," he said, his voice rough. "Can't you?" I asked, tilting my head, a smile playing at my lips. He replied, his eyes narrowing. "When these restraints come off, You'll pay for it. A thrill shot through me at the promise in his voice, but I forced myself to remain calm, even as my heart pounded in my chest. We'll see, I said softly, stepping back and letting my gaze linger on him for a moment before turning away. I untied the knots at his wrists with deliberate slowness, feeling the heat of his gaze on me the entire time. When the final knot came undone, I stepped back, my breath catching as he sat up, rolling his wrists with a predatory grace. "Run, Karina," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "What?" I asked, my heart leaping into my throat. "Run," he repeated, his eyes gleaming with a mix of amusement and hunger. "Because when I catch you, you're mine." For a moment, I hesitated, caught between fear and exhilaration. Then, with a shaky breath, I turned and ran, the sound of his laughter chasing me down the hallway. The hunt had begun, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to escape, or be caught. Chapter 10. The cool air hit my face as I burst through the cabin door and into the forest. The towering trees swayed gently, their shadows creating a maze of light and dark as I sprinted between them. My heartbeat roared in my ears, each step pounding against the forest floor. I glanced back, catching the faintest glimpse of him, his confident stride, his piercing gaze tracking my every move. He could catch me if he wanted to, I knew that. But he didn't. Instead, he let the chase linger, the game stretching out, each moment filled with the anticipation of being caught. I ducked behind a thick oak tree, pressing my back against the rough bark and trying to quiet my ragged breathing. The sound of his footsteps slowed, deliberate, as if he wanted me to hear them. "Think you can hide from me, Karina?" His voice carried through the trees, low and teasing. I peeked around the trunk just as he stepped into view from the other side, his grin wolfish, his eyes locked onto mine. A laugh escaped me, bubbling up despite myself, light and carefree in the tension of the moment. "You think this is funny?" he asked, cocking his head. Before I could answer, he closed the distance between us in a heartbeat. Strong hands gripped my waist as he hoisted me effortlessly off the ground, my laughter turning into a startled yelp. "Got you," he growled, his tone triumphant yet warm. I wriggled in his grasp, but it was no use. He swung me over his shoulder as though I weighed nothing, his grip firm yet careful. The world tilted as I hung there, my hair spilling over his back, my fists slightly beating against him in protest. "This isn't fair," I managed between laughs, my face flushed with adrenaline and exhilaration. "Fair?" he said, chuckling. "I told you to run, didn't I? You just weren't fast enough." He carried me back toward the cabin, his strides steady and unhurried, as if savoring his victory. The sound of an axe splitting wood grew louder as we neared, and I caught sight of his brother, still at work outside. He walked right past, carrying me inside as if it were the most natural thing in the world. In an instant, I was beneath him, his hands pinning mine above my head as his weight pressed me into the mattress. "Your turn," he said, his voice low and dangerous, his breath warm against my skin. My pulse quickened as I met his gaze, the predatory gleam in his eyes sending a thrill through me. "Are you going to punish me?" I asked, unable to keep the teasing edge from my voice. He smirked, his lips curving into a wicked smile. "No," he said, his tone softer now, though no less intense. "Punishment would imply you did something wrong. This is what you wanted, isn't it?" I swallowed hard, unable to look away from him. "And if it is?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Then it's time you learn what happens when you play with fire," he murmured, lowering his lips to mine in a kiss that was as much a claim as it was a promise. Keith ties my wrists with a deliberate slowness, his touch light but firm, the faint scrape of rope against my skin sending shivers down my spine. He leans in, his breath warm against my ear. "Let's see how much patience you have," he murmurs, his voice low and teasing. He steps back slightly, his eyes roaming over me as though I were a painting he wanted to memorize. Then, with deliberate care, he parts my legs. His hands are steady, his fingers grazing my skin just enough to leave a tingling warmth in their wake. My breath catches in my throat as he lowers his head and presses his lips to the soft skin of my inner thigh. The kiss is slow, lingering, almost reverent, yet edged with something darker. His lips stray upward in agonizing increments, each touch lighting a fire beneath my skin. I can't help but let out a quiet moan, my body betraying me with a shiver as his lips brush dangerously close but never crossing the line. "You're trembling," he says softly, his voice filled with amusement. "Do you want me to stop?" I shake my head, unable to find my voice. His chuckle is low, rumbling, as he plants another kiss, this one slightly firmer, on the sensitive skin just above my knee. "Good," he whispers. "Because I'm just getting started." The air between us feels electric, charged with a tension that refuses to break. Keith shifts slightly, one hand trailing up my thigh, his fingers ghosting over my skin as though he were mapping it. His lips return to their task, teasing the same spots over and over, his control maddeningly perfect. I'm so lost in the sensations that I barely register the sound of footsteps until Kieran's voice cuts through the haze. "Well, isn't this a sight?" he drawls from the doorway, leaning casually against the frame. Keith doesn't stop immediately, instead, he presses one last lingering kiss to my thigh before turning his head toward his brother. "Are you going to say something, or are you just here to watch?" Kieran smirks, his arms crossed. "Not to kill the mood, but if you keep this up, she won't have any strength left for tonight." "Just saying." I turn my head, my eyes meeting Keith's. His gaze softens, the intensity in his expression giving way to something almost tender. He sighs, his lips twitching into a faint, reluctant smile. "As much as I hate to admit it," he says, his tone resigned, "he's right. You'll need your strength." His hands move to the knots binding my wrists, his touch gentle as he frees me. The absence of the ropes leaves my skin feeling strangely cool, and I miss their presence more than I care to admit. "We'll continue this later," Keith promises, his voice quiet but filled with a certainty that makes my pulse quicken. He stands, his presence still commanding despite the softness in his expression. I watch him walk toward the door, my gaze following every step. He pauses just before he leaves, glancing back at me. "I'll draw you a bath before we go. See you in a couple of hours, little one." I nod, unable to do more than that as my mind reels from the sensations and emotions of the moment. The bath is warm, the water soothing against my skin, but my thoughts refuse to quiet. I think of Keith, of the way his touch seemed to straddle the line between control and care, power and gentleness. My mind drifts, the tension from earlier lingering in the edges of my consciousness, until a low growl pulls me back to the present. The sound is closer now, deeper, and I can feel the vibration of it in my chest. Wrapping myself in a towel, I hurry back to the bedroom, my heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Chapter 11. I sit on the edge of the bed, the room cloaked in darkness save for the faint moonlight filtering through the window. The growls grow louder, more guttural, and my pulse quickens as the door creaks open. Keith is the first to enter, his form massive and primal, his wolfish eyes gleaming with an intensity that steals my breath. He's followed closely by Kieran, who moves with a predatory grace, his growl a low rumble that sends a shiver down my spine. Keith's gaze locks onto mine, and for a moment, I search his eyes for any trace of the gentleness from earlier. But there's none to be found, only hunger, raw and unrelenting. He paces before me, his movements deliberate, each step measured as though he were savoring the anticipation. Behind him, Kieran growls impatiently, his body tense with barely restrained energy. Keith pauses, his eyes narrowing slightly. He doesn't speak, but his meaning is clear. Slowly, I loosen the towel, letting it slip from my shoulders as his gaze follows every movement. I stand, letting the towel slide from my body and pull at my feet. The air in the room feels charged, and my heart pounds in my chest as I meet Keith's piercing gaze. This is my silent invitation, my surrender, and the heat in his eyes ignites into a blaze. With a low, guttural growl, Keith closes the distance between us in a single stride. His hands are rough yet careful as they grip my waist, yanking me against him with a force that sends a shiver through my entire body. The heat radiating from him is overwhelming, his presence dominating the space as if nothing else exists but the two of us. He lifts me with ease, my feet leaving the floor as I instinctively wrap my legs around his waist. The motion draws us closer, every hard contour of his body aligning with mine, igniting a spark that races through my veins. His arms envelop me tighter, his hold unyielding yet grounding, sending a simmering tension through every nerve. Keith lowers me just slightly and onto his huge cock. I cry out as he slides it forcefully inside and starts bouncing me up and down. His brother doesn't want to lose any moment and he comes behind me placing his claws on my hips. He looks at Keith and as if they understand each other, he stops bouncing me on his cock and parts my ass cheeks for his brother. What? No, I can't. I will please you using my mouth, but no matter how loud I say it, is as if it doesn't reach their ears. He props himself on my hole and inserts himself painfully. I scream in pain as I sink my nails into Keith's shoulders and he growls in response. They both start to move inside me, each with his own hole. I can feel Keith's big cock and his length pounding inside me, but even though he's so big, I can't help but feel his brother more as he's tearing and bleeding my ass once again. They both fill me at once and toss me on the bed. Everything hurts. I feel as if my lower body is broken, although it isn't, or is it? Keith draws near me and I try to prop myself half up. Karen is quick to get in front of him and he shoves his length in my mouth. I almost gag but urge myself to stop as I see his black fur, once in front of me and now behind. I brace myself as he positions himself between my cheeks. My shouting is muffled by the cock in my mouth, but my eyes won't stop the tears from falling. They both pound deep and violently. My eyes roll back as the pain consumes me, and mercifully, everything turns black. The darkness feels like a reprieve, a sanctuary from the agony that racks my body. Chapter 12. When I wake, the room is bathed in the soft glow of late morning or perhaps early afternoon. My body feels heavy, each movement pulling at the dull ache in my limbs. Keith and Karen are beside me, their human forms sprawled across the bed, their faces peaceful in slumber. I try to slip out of bed quietly, but the moment I shift my weight, a sharp pain flares in my rear, and a soft gasp escapes my lips. The sound is enough to rouse them both. Keith is the first to stir, his eyes snapping open as his arms instinctively wrap around me. "What's wrong?" he murmurs, his voice husky from sleep. "I'm sorry," I whisper, guilt lacing my voice as I glance between them. "I didn't mean to wake either of you." Keith pulls me closer, his warmth enveloping me. "You don't need to apologize," he says, his tone firm but soothing. Karen, now awake as well, sits up and glances down at the bed. His eyes narrow as he notices the faint crimson stain on the sheets beneath me. "Keith," he says, his voice low but pointed. "You bled her again." Keith barks at him with anger in his voice. Karen stiffens, his jaw tightening as his gaze darts to his brother and his lips curl into a sneer. "Or maybe it was you," he snaps back, his voice rising. The tension between them is palpable, their wolves simmering just beneath the surface. Keith's expression shifts as the realization dawns on him, and his shoulders slump. "We both did," he admits quietly, his voice tinged with guilt. "But you pushed too hard." Karen scoffs, but before he can retort, Keith cuts him off, his voice commanding. "Go. Draw her a bath." With a sharp glare, Karen rises and storms out of the room, the door clicking shut behind him. Keith turns his full attention back to me, his hands gentle as they cup my face. His golden green eyes, so often fierce, are soft with regret. "It's going to be okay," he murmurs, his thumb brushing against my cheek. "We'll take care of you, as you took care of us." "I am so sorry." I lift my hand to cradle his face, offering a small, tired smile. "You should teach your wolves to use lube," I say, my voice laced with a touch of teasing despite the lingering ache. A faint smile tugs at the corner of his lips, and he lets out a soft chuckle. "Oh, little one," he says, his voice a mixture of affection and sorrow. Leaning forward, he presses a tender kiss to my lips, a promise of care and devotion in the simple gesture. "I'll make it right," he whispers against my skin. "You have my word." Keith lifts me effortlessly into his arms, his hold steady yet gentle as he makes his way toward the steamy bathtub. The warmth of the rising mist from the water caresses my skin, a stark contrast to the ache still lingering in my body. Kieran, already waiting, strips off his clothes with brisk efficiency. His movements are practiced, his gaze flickering to mine for the briefest moment before he steps forward. Keith hands me over carefully, his strong arms shifting me into Kieran's chest as though I were the most delicate thing in the world. Kieran cradles me close, his skin warm and firm as he steps into the tub, lowering both of us into the inviting water. The heat seeps into my muscles, drawing a soft sigh from my lips as the tension begins to melt away. Keith isn't far behind. He undresses quickly and slides into the water beside us, his larger frame hovering close, a reassuring presence. He leans over me, his fingers brushing a damp strand of hair behind my ear. His touch is tender, deliberate, as though he's trying to convey something words can't quite express. "Will you let us take care of you?" Kieran asks, his voice softer than I've ever heard it. I glance at him, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. His arms tighten slightly around me, his hold protective rather than possessive. Keith's eyes meet mine, filled with an unspoken plea. "We both care about your well-being," he says, his voice steady and reassuring. Even Kieran, although he won't show it the same way. Kieran lets out a low scoff, but the corner of his mouth twitches as though he's fighting a smile. "Don't push it, Keith." Their playful exchange draws a faint smile to my lips despite everything. I look between the two of them, their features not so different and united in the same earnest expression. It's disarming. Vulnerable. Chapter 13. Finally, I nod, the motion small but filled with trust. "Okay," I whisper. "Take care of me." Keith's gaze softens further as his hand moves to cup my cheek. His thumb brushes over my skin, the roughness of it grounding me. "Good girl," he murmurs, his voice a gentle caress. Kieran shifts beneath me, his hands moving to adjust my position. "Lean back," he instructs, his tone steady but lacking its usual edge. I comply, letting myself rest against his chest as his hands begin to gently massage the tension from my shoulders. Keith dips a cloth into the water, wringing it out before running it over my skin with slow, deliberate strokes. His touch is soothing, his movements unhurried as though he's determined to erase every trace of discomfort. "You're tense," Keith observes, his eyes flicking to mine. "I wonder why," I reply dryly, a hint of humor in my voice. Kieran chuckles, a low rumble that vibrates through his chest. "You've got a sharp tongue for someone letting us pamper her." "Maybe I like seeing you both work for it," I shoot back, surprising even myself with the boldness. Keith's lips twitch into a smirk, but there's a softness in his expression that betrays his amusement. "Fair enough," he says, his fingers trailing down my arm as he rinses away the soap. Kieran leans closer, his breath warm against my ear. "If you're not careful, little one, I might start to think you enjoy our attention." I tilt my head slightly, meeting his gaze. "Maybe I do," I admit, my voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, the room is quiet save for the gentle splash of water. The weight of their care and attention presses against me, both overwhelming and comforting in equal measure. Keith breaks the silence, his voice low and soothing. "You're safe with us, Gorina. Always." Something in his words settles deep within me, a promise that feels unshakable. I close my eyes and let the warmth of the water and their presence envelop me, allowing myself to believe, if only for a moment, that I truly am safe. Keith lifts me with ease, my body leaving the bathtub, and I instinctively wrap my legs around his waist. The pain has subsided due to the warmth provided by the water. The movement presses us closer, the hard planes of his body against mine creating a friction that sets my nerves alight. His arms tighten around me, and his grip is firm, possessive, but not painful. He lowers me just slightly so I can feel the tip of his erection. His lips hover near my neck, his breath hot and uneven as he drags it across my skin. I can feel the tension in his body, the restraint it takes for him to hold back, and it makes my pulse race even faster. "You're mine," he growls, the words a rough whisper against my ear. His voice carries a depth of emotion, a rawness that sends a thrill through me. Behind him, Kieran lets out a low, impatient rumble. "Don't forget, brother," he says, his tone laced with amusement and hunger. "We're sharing." Keith turns his head slightly, his gaze flicking to Kieran for only a moment before returning to me. "You'll have your turn," he replies, his voice a dangerous growl, "but right now, she's mine." Kieran smirks, wrapping himself casually with a towel, but saying nothing more, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of anticipation and amusement. Keith's focus shifts back to me, his hands roaming over my back as he lowers me further, his movements deliberate and controlled. His lips find the hollow of my throat, planting kisses that are slow and searing, each one more intense than the last. I let out a soft gasp, my hands clutching at his shoulders for balance as my body betrays me with a tremble. He seems to revel in my reaction, his lips curving into a faint smile against my skin. "Tell me, little one," he murmurs, his voice deep and teasing. "Are you ready for this?" My breath hitches as I nod, unable to form words, the weight of his gaze leaving me completely undone. "Good," he says, his tone both reassuring and commanding. "Because I'm not stopping now." The end.